Ken Clearwater is in the studio. Hello, Ken. How are you?
Hi, Kate. I'm great.
Now, you have become a finalist for the Kiwibank New Zealand Local Hero of the Year. We'll find out a bit more about that soon, but tell us a bit about yourself, Ken, and what made you where you are today and how you got a nomination.
I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and rape as a 12-year-old boy. So I went from a happy-go-lucky kid to a nasty, violent boy. Got kicked out of school at 14 for assault and things like that, and went into drugs, alcohol, gangs, and realised that I had to change my life. I was married, my wife left me, and I ended up with the two girls, and so I knew I had to change my life. I went out to what was called Sunnyside, which is now called Hill Morton, for help. I'd threatened to kill a man over a game of pool, and then I'd looked at contemplating suicide, and my daughters basically saved my life. And when I went out for help, I was turned away. I went to 8 different buildings out at Sunnyside at the time, and each and every one of them just turned me away. And I realised then that there's nothing for males. So, and I found a peer support group for male survivors, and I went there, and I think it was 90, 95, 96, and realised that was the place I needed to be. And been there ever since, really. Set up agencies throughout New Zealand and a national body, and also got involved in an international body where we've got over 30 countries involved, so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's all you've done.
It's been pretty quiet.
Holy smoke! I mean, so many questions for you. Right? Tell me, how old were you when you realised that you needed to change? I mean, you've obviously been through a whole lot of stuff to get to that point.
I was 38, which is not uncommon for males. Normally, it can take anywhere between 25 and 33 years for males to disclose that they're victims of sexual trauma. There's a lot of shame, guilt, fear, patriarchal society. We're supposed to be tough and staunch and things like that. So I lived under that, and that's what the gangs and the violence was all about, to prove that I was a real man. And being small didn't help, of course. I had that small man syndrome, so I had to fight anybody that came along. But so I was 38, so like I say, that was about 90, 95, 96 when I realised that I needed to make changes. No one else was going to make those changes for me. Just really saddened that there was just nothing, still not a lot for blokes. That's one of our major problems. We live in a system that believes that all men are perpetrators and all women are victims, and so until we change that, not a lot's going to change, and we've got to accept and allow males to be able to come forward and get the help they need.
In the 90s, how did you get the real help you needed after being through the health system, I assume?
It was interesting because after being refused by all those professionals in those buildings, it was a woman who was in a prefab, and she was typing away, and she looked up. I mean, I don't even know whether I had told her my story. I was just that numb by the end of this, thinking that I was just worthless. And she said, "You need help?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You won't get it here." And I said, "Well, where do I go?" She said, "Would you go to psych emergency?" And I said, "Yes." I didn't even know what psych emergency was, but she offered me something. And then she explained there would be a psychologist there would interview me and see where I was at. And so I went there. He was great, but he admitted that he didn't know how to work with the sexual abuse I'd suffered. He could work with my anger and work me through that, but he said I'd need a specialist therapist for that. So I went along to a therapist, was hopeless. And then it was when I found the peer support group. It was in the press. They used to have a community section, and it just said, "Are you a male? Were you sexually abused in childhood?" And I really had to read it about 10 times to actually see it there in black and white, because, like I say, this was probably 90, 94, 95. Then there was a number, and it said, "Ring Andrew." So I rang, and a woman answered, and I was ready to hang up, but because of the shame and guilt. But she had such a welcoming voice. She said, "Have you rung up about the group?" And I said, "Yes." So she told me where it was and when it started, and it took me 3 attempts before I went along there, before I had the courage to go through the door. There were all these other men in there who had experienced what I experienced. And Ian, who had facilitated that, then set up Male Survivors Sexual Abuse Trust as a trust in 1997, and asked me if I'd go on the first board. So it went from there, really.
It's now a nationwide support group?
Yeah, we've got agencies in the Waikato, Auckland, Wellington, Nelson, Dunedin, and Christchurch, of course. So I've just had a phone call from Napier. They want to set something up in Napier. We've got something going in Tauranga, but that's really at the early stages. And we set up a national body. I think 2013 I approached MSD for some funding, and they turned me down. And there was a police officer by the name of Tasha Penny, and she says, "Did you get your money?" I said, "No." She said, "Leave it up to me." And she got 10 grand we needed to set up, went to police college, and we set up the national body. So that's what we're working through at the moment.
What an amazing story. Tell me now how Well, we've got this Kiwi Bank New Zealander of the Year. High-profile people win that in the past. There's been Mike King, that was last year.
Richie McCaw, of course. That was about, I think, 2016. And my daughter nominated me. That to me is a real buzz. They were just children when their mum left, and so they had no idea what was going on. And I sat them down and explained why that I probably could have been the Mahmoods and all that sort of thing, but they chose to stay with me, and they're still my biggest supporters all these years. My grandkids now, they used to see me on TV and thought I was famous, and had no idea what I actually did.
Yeah.
But now they're all at an age where they understand what I do, and they've been so supportive of the work, and I've had some really good support. But to have your family behind you is just massive.
So there are 969 nominations for this award, and there are only about 20 finalists. You must feel so proud to have got that far.
It is humbling, and it's and just getting nominated, and for me the most important thing is the fact that it's getting out there in black and white, male survivors of sexual abuse. So for me, yes, it's nice to pick up a certificate and a medal, because we had a ceremony here in Christchurch for all the local people, and I think there were 3 of us from Kaiapoi.
Fantastic.
Who got the local hero medals, and then they picked 10, and then and the lady rang me and said, you're in the top 10, and then she rang and said, you're in the top 3. Taking my grandson with me, Ethan, it's his 18th birthday, he's coming up with me, and Louise Nicholas, of course, she's coming to support me as well.
Brilliant.
So she's got a ticket, and she'll be at the same table I'm at.
I can imagine it'll be a very suave shindig.
Yeah.
They must be looking after you. Do you know much about the ceremony and where it is and all of that?
Yeah, it's at Cordis Hotel in Auckland, and it is a big function. They have all the corporate tables, and they'll have band or singing, and they'll have speeches and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, looking forward to it. Get to put the suit and tie on and look flash.
And of course, as you say, you are putting the word out there and making this issue and your cause much more public, which is probably the biggest thing at the end of the day.
I'd go to places and people would walk out of the room when I walked in because they just didn't want to hear what I had to say. You sort of carry low self-esteem as a survivor, and then all this is happening around you. People don't want to hear, couldn't get funding. We never knew from one day to the next whether we were going to get funding. And then 3 years ago, government finally accepted the work we do. And so 320 million was put into the sexual violence and family violence sector, and 11.5 over the next 4 years has been targeted for working with male survivors in a peer support model. So, so we're pretty wrapped.
Tell me, if there are people listening now that want to reach out and get some help, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
To just give me a ring,
Okay.
or go to our website, 027 353 3854, and we can certainly support them. And we work with the parents. We get a lot of women who ring and say, my husband's just disclosed and he's never told anybody, what can I do? And one of the things we like to sit with partners, because they feel that the behaviours of their husbands, they sort of think, what am I responsible here for and stuff like that? Is it my fault he's carrying on like that? And when we're able to explain that those are natural behaviours for a male to, when he's been sexually violated, to behave, and so it helps them, and of course it helps strengthen the families and stuff like that, and that's a big role for us.
What's your phone number again?
027 353 3854.
And what's the website, Ken?
Please just malesurvivor.nz.
Fantastic. Hey, I really appreciate you coming in, telling us your story, Ken Clearwater, and all the best for the finalists for the Kiwi Bank New Zealand Local Hero of the Year. It's happening on the 20th of February, so we will be watching and waiting to see what happens. Very proud that you're a North Cantabrian and that you are spreading the word for this amazing issue.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Kate.